The Busby Babes. This was a group of players who began their playing careers in the Manchester United youth system. Recruited and trained by Chief Scout Joe Armstrong and Assistant Manager Jimmy Murphy, under the management of the now legendary Sir Matt Busby. These players were not only revered for their talent at such a young age, but being a product of the club rather than purchased from others. No one could deny that this group had a bright future ahead of themselves, and were often regarded as the greatest English football team since World War II. On February 6, 1958, the club was returning from a European Cup match in Belgrade, Yugoslavia, after qualifying for the European Cup semi-finals. The flight had stopped in Munich to refuel, and the weather was getting worse. After refueling, pilots James Thane and Kenneth Raymond were tasked with assessing the risk of actually leaving in what had become a snowstorm. The first two attempts to take off were a failure. There was slush building up on the runway, and a fear of ice on the wings was on everyone's mind. Passengers were loaded off the plane after the second attempt. The station engineer, Bill Black, said that there was a problem with the boost surging in the port engine, and that holding the plane overnight for retuning would be best. Thane wanted to stay on schedule, though, and believed that simply opening the throttle even more slowly than they had been would work just fine. The third attempt would be the last. As the plane neared the end of the runway, Raymond shouted, exclaiming the plane wouldn't make it. The plane skidded off the end of the runway and crashed into a fence surrounding the airport. It hit a house, home to a family of 6 who all managed to survive. Part of the tail was destroyed, sending the left side of the cockpit into a tree. The right side of the fuselage hit a structure that contained a truck filled with fuel, which would explode. 20 of the passengers would die instantly, with 3 dying later as a result. 8 players, 3 staffers, along with 8 journalists and 2 others. This was, and arguably still is, the saddest day in football history. Among the players lost was Roger Byrne, a 28-year-old left back and club captain of Manchester United. Mark Jones, the 24-year-old centre-half. 21-year-old Duncan Edwards, who fought for 15 days in the hospital after the crash. Tommy Taylor, the 26-year-old centre-forward who had been purchased from Barnsley 5 years prior. Eddie Coleman, the 21-year-old right-half. Liam Whalen, 22 years old, was inside right for United and was the former club captain. David Pegg, 22-year-old outside left who made his United debut at 17, and 25-year-old Jeff Ment, another left fullback. Pilot Kenneth Raymond would pass away 3 weeks after the crash as a result of brain damage. Notable survivors like manager Matt Busby and Bobby Charlton would go on to be 2 of the most important names in the history of Manchester United and English football. The club would actually make it to the FA Cup final that year, and although ultimately losing, it gave fans and supporters hope for the future. The disaster will never be forgotten. Special ceremonies are always held on the anniversary, along with a number of memorial structures, most famously the Munich clock on the southeast corner of the club's home, Old Trafford. The songs and poems of the club supporters serve to remind the world what happened that day. A broken plane, a broken dream, a broken heart, a broken team. No words said, a silent vow. We loved you then, we love you now.